I'm Donald Moffat.
And I'm Heather Menzies. Logan's Run will not be on tonight.
But stay tuned for the Charlie Brown special and the Fat Albert Halloween special.
And we'll be back next Monday night.
Houston, make sure you subscribe to the Word Balloon podcast, become a legal Word Balloon listener at patreon.com/wordballoon. I just want to tell you a copy.
Judd Winick, it's been a little bit, but welcome back to Word Balloon. Fantastic to see you, my man.
Sir, thank you for having me. It is always a pleasure. And it has been. It has been too long.
Did you go to Comic-Con last weekend?
No, I didn't. I actually haven't been in 2 years for apropos of just nothing. I mean, I'm exclusively asked now, for on the kids book side. I do a kids series. If I'm not on a panel discussing children's stuff on like the Saturday or Sunday, which is more family oriented, I'm just not going. That's too long. That's too long a discussion. Like I have been going on and off since like 1995.
Yeah.
So I'm an old man, and I owe my entire career to the San Diego Comic-Con. So there, I met Bob Schreck at Comic-Con. I want to say in '95. And we became friends, and that's when he was publishing Oni Press, and that's where it all began for me. So I owe everything. I'm not knocking San Diego, mind you.
No.
Everything here is because I went to San Diego.
Absolutely, man. Well, I know Hilo celebrating 11 or 12 years, and we're
coming up at 11. Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
We got the big Christmas special coming up at the end. It's coming out in October in time for Christmas buying, correct?
I've got the advanced reader copy and paperback right here to make my publicist happy. Oh, there she is. And you can't even, in this one, I'm sorry, you can't even tell. There's going to be a special foil cover. They said, Judd, we're going to do a foil cover. I said, that's great. I don't know what that is. So then they sent it to me, and it'll be sparkly where it's red, and that'll be fun.
That's nice.
It is. Hey, look, I like sparkly things. I'm never one to say no. They want to spend an extra little coin on the cover. I'm happy.
Well, those of us in the superhero fandom, when they hear foil covers, we start to get twinges of '90s indulgence sometimes, and collectibles that are worth nothing later on. But no, that makes sense to do it that way.
Yeah, no. When they told me foil covers, they're like, all right, that's what I was thinking. Like, so I'm thinking Death of Superman, and are we buying the bad poly bags again? I was just talking to Brad Meltzer. So Brad Meltzer is my college roommate. We've been friends for 35 plus years. And I was in Newbury Comics, where we both bought Death of Superman in Boston when it actually came out. So we were just talking about all that business. And I mean, you lived through it as well. It was hilarious when it was finally announced, like, those plastic bags are keeping the comics in. Those are not actually protective bags. They don't do anything. So you're just buying the bags for no reason. And
now blind bags are back. Blind bags are a thing now. Yeah. Daredevil, when Steph Phillips started her run, was in a blind bag. And as I understand it, dude, I dodged San Diego this year, and I don't regret it, but it was funny. I'm hearing about all this stuff, and yeah, I guess blind bags galore. All these publishers are doing it now, and it's like, okay, all right, that's fine. Let's make sure what's in them is what's worth the most something inside of them, but
Yeah. And everything old is new again. It'll,
oh, 100%.
there isn't a little bit of marketing that wants at some point work its way back around again. I mean, I think it's
Uh,
fun. I mean, we could talk about this at the top. Comics seem popular again. Like superhero comics seem to there's way more discourse. There's way more complaining than ever was, for sure. But people are buying books, and maybe that's why there's so much complaining about it. Uh, but it isn't the interesting geek culture. Geek culture is so big. You hear about fist fights in San Diego to get to get collectibles and merchandise, and oh boy, the cosplay, which is just again, I was just talking with Brad about this. There was like a DC costume cosplay meetup they do behind San Diego, and we were just talking about that. When they started doing this a couple of years ago, it just used to be a group shot of like 150 or 200 people. It was amazing. Now they got their phones and like they're whipping it out. They're doing an action shot. So they're all like lined up facing each other, and someone ran through with the phone, if you can imagine it. So we're seeing like they're running through a column of them and they're all facing off against each other. It's like, oh man, this is like high quality cinematic shit we're doing now. I mean, truly, I remember being at Comic-Con and being at the table and nudging, like, do you see that guy dressed as Superman? Like, yeah, no, he looked pretty good. And meeting a dude who was like, like 6'2", had a decent build, black hair, full head of hair, wasn't wearing glasses, didn't have facial hair or something. Like you see like a guy wearing a superhero costume, receding hairline, glasses, big old beard, like, yeah, he's wearing a superhero costume. But a guy actually looked like Superman. That was a big deal. Now, God, I still talk about there was a dude who actually had a Hulkbuster costume, like full on Iron Man Hulkbuster costume that
yeah.
the rest of his Avengers buddies that went around with him were mostly there for support. Like they had like a toolkit and like a hand drill if you had to go to the bathroom, they can get out of there quickly. It's amazing. Okay.
Well,
that was a
also,
very quick segue. Go on.
but honestly, mentioning again the production values and outcome when somebody shoots you on your iPhone and stuff. I think the companies finally understand, because I remember when the first Suicide Squad movie came out, and Warner Brothers was pissed that people in Hall H whipped out their phones and were filming the trailer, and they're like, well, that was supposed to be an exclusive for Hall H. It's like, no, no, no. You want that because now people are doing their marketing for you and they're excited about the brand. So now they get it. Now they get it.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious.
5,000 people in the hall can watch it. Or, I mean, I guess the big one was Doomsday, where they showed the trailer plus, like there was a couple extra scenes in there. And I think they know, like, yeah, we're going to show it in front of Spider-Man in 3 days. It's fine. Let them have the crappy iPhone version and they'll talk about it. And like, that's the thing, is that people not unlike us are now working for the companies. They should know how these things work.
No, absolutely. Mentioning Doomsday, especially with all of Marvel's parallel worlds, it couldn't help but make me think of your fantastic run on EXiles. And I wondered, did you pitch EXiles to them? How did EXiles happen?
EXiles, no, Marvel came to me this very early days. It was funny, more how the sausage was made. Bob Schreck, when he took a job at DC and he brought me on to write Green Lantern, and then and was doing pretty well. And I got a call from Marvel, and they said, we've got this like pinup book of like multiverse Marvel characters. And we were thinking of, and they sort of said, we wanted to come up with like an alternate version of the X-Men. And I said, okay. It's like, and they like live in a multiverse world. Yeah, like kind of live in a different world, and maybe they're brought together. And I said, let me think on it. I came back to them with the idea that we're kind of ripping off Sliders and Quantum Leap. And they said, oh no, that's perfect. And some of the characters I came up with, some came from this pinup book where, it's like, here on this special Marvel world, all the characters are robots. And someone did a pinup like Wolverine is a robot and Professor X is a robot. That's what happens on like Robot World. And there's a couple of them I pulled out, like Nocturne. Someone came up with it. Oh, like, that's cool. Nightcrawler's daughter. So I came up with the idea, and then they supported it. And I actually had to zip back to Shrek, like, Marvel wants me to write a book. He said, so go write a book for Marvel. I said, that's okay. So like, hey, I don't see anyone telling you shouldn't do it. And if if they don't like that, they should do something about that. Like, okay, like, he was basically kicking that one upstairs. Which later I got signed to exclusive, and that was the EXiles was the only book I walked away from and I wasn't done. It was the only one in my entire career that I
Wow.
didn't. Yeah, and I still had more stories. I still had a lot. I still had plenty to do. I mean, it's been over 25 years, but I had a lot more fun that I still wanted to do. And whoops,
Well,
my camera keeps moving. I apologize.
it's quite all right, buddy. No, no, no. It happens. I kept expecting, I have a new webcam, and every now and then it'll just start tracking, and suddenly I'll be incredibly close. So if it happens, don't freak out. But yeah,
Got it.
I'm not trying to freak you out. But well, mentioning Green Lantern, I forgot that you were you the first Kyle Rayner, right? Like regular writer? Because
No, no. I mean, no. Ron created. No, Ron
Mars,
created. Yeah,
Mars.
Ron
Okay.
Mars. Sorry. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ron. So Ron
Oh,
Mars.
it's all good.
So Ron Mars created Kyle Rayner in the wake of
Final
when
night
yeah
or whenever the
when
hell, yeah,
oh
Cal went nuts.
oh when Hal like lost his cookies. It was like it was amazing and tragic and awesome. And he brought in Kyle Rayner, but Ron Mars and Bob Schreck, when Ron, who had been writing Green Lantern for a very long time, when he was stepping down, Bob, I mean, it was one of these things where for a reason, Bob, like Ron had a say in who was going to take over the book. And when Bob suggested me and he had me read my graphic novel, Pedro and me, so Ron was all on board about that. And I talked to Ron about it, and he and Bob sort of gave me marching orders. And at the time, I was still in my late 20s. And that was sort of the pitch, is that he said, like, yeah, it's like a younger man's perspective of what's going on here. Like, closer to like a Peter Parker character than what we had with Hal. And that's when I came in. So I had like a 3+ year run,
Yeah.
maybe four. It was a while. And so I feel a very big affinity to the character. So anytime it pops up, very excited about Lanterns.
Yeah.
Which just saw the new trailer, and I'll be honest, I was mildly excited prior to this, and now I'm insanely excited. There's something that just popped in the last trailer, just got me. And I think they know, like the music, they showed a little more, superpowers, a little more business, and
Well,
I'm gonna spoil it if you haven't seen the trailer. Someone said the word Manhunter, and
yep.
and actually Hal so it's well, John Stewart said to him, like, "What's a Manhunter?" And Hal looks at him very, very slow. "Where did you hear that word?" It's like, oh, I got chills. I got a little bit of chills. It was like, oh, okay. So I'm excited.
And the best things about Sinestro, because
Oh,
the
oh,
good Sinestro writers know he knows how to push Hal's buttons, and you
yeah.
get that from the trailer, which is maybe you're not here to mentor him, maybe he's here to replace you, and it's like, hey.
And I just thought they told me a lot just in one, like 15 seconds, that scene, not even 15 seconds. It's like,
Yeah.
Sinestro's locked up. We're doing like a Hannibal Lecter thing. Oh, and he can still work him. He just, it's like, you just see it. You just see it. Like the storyteller in me is like, oh, I got it now. Okay.
That's the great thing, Judd, because the superhero reflexes are still there with you, and
Yeah.
you bring them to Hilo and your new character that you introduced this year, the Mighty. And I love that about you, and it's something I've always loved when we talk. Is it's your cartoony art style, but all the superhero moves that you honed working at the Big Two, you're bringing to Hilo, and any parent who, if they're not reading Hilo to their kid and they're a comic fan, they should, because they're going to love the action and the humor that you're bringing, and the kids are going to love it too. But that's the thing, man. I think there are some kids books, not to demean them, but some of the kid book people, they don't know the superhero moves to
No.
put in and do it well. And again, your track record, you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I did my 10,000 hours making up superhero comics,
Yeah,
and it's very helpful now that, I mean, Ed Brubaker and I would talk about this when we started doing other stuff. Ed was working in TV, and I was I was doing graphic novels, and people were, the story Ed would tell is that he'd be in the writer's room, and they got like a studio note, they got something came in, and suddenly they got to like come in and do a rewrite. of this episode. And it's like, yeah, this character thing isn't working. We're not doing that. And Ed would just say like, okay, so what if we lose the third act? And what if this character instead of it does this, we move that to the next episode and we have this one and we'll just like make that whole second act, the third act, and we'll do that. And everyone's like, how'd you come up with that so quickly? It's like, oh, I wrote superhero comics for a long time. And that comes from one, you got to think quickly. The book has to come out every month. Doesn't matter. Every month's got to come out. And also sometimes you get notes like you're writing Batman and someone says, you can't use Nightwing. Like, sorry, like that 6-issue story arc you're doing, you can't use Nightwing, but it's Nightwing. Like, yeah, he's going to be in space and he has a broken leg. It's like, but it's Nightwing. It's like, yeah, you can't use him. How about Martian Manhunter? I don't want to use Martian Manhunter. Okay, let me just, I'll go back and think. And you go back and you think and you work something out and you got to do it quickly. So when you can do it with your own characters, I wouldn't say it's easy, but suddenly, yeah, it's the gag that Joe Pantoliano talks about in The Matrix, where he looks at all the ones and zeros coming down the screen. He said, like, you see ones and zeros. I see blonde, brunette, redhead. Ed and I would joke that, like, yeah, you see all these things going on. And we just see like, no, we can just take that there, move that there, move that there, done. And not get too precious about it. And it's helpful with, again, I've been doing, like, I'm coming up on my 12th Hilo book coming out in February, 13 if you count the holiday book, and then now do a new series of The Mighty. And generating story isn't really the challenging part. Making it good is of course challenging. And for me, it does really feel like so much that I've been doing. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 56. I've been at this a while. And I did a comic strip for a while, which is what I always wanted to do, which is kind of an all ages thing. You draw goofy, and it's supposed to be for an audience of moms and dads. The stereotypical shot is like the family sitting down at the breakfast table and looking at the morning paper, and everybody's supposed to be able to read that. Everyone reads Marmaduke, so that's the audience. Is everybody, or Miss Peach or Mama or Wizard of Id. I can go on. But,
I love all this. Keep going.
And I wanted to do that, but then when I got syndicated, it was in 1996 and 97 when newspapers started taking a dive. Anyway, I wanted to do newspaper comic strips. Then I did an animated series for Cartoon Network, Life and Times of Juniper Lee, again, like all ages. And then I started doing superhero comics, which was not all ages. And I wrote superhero comics. Me, Jeff Johns, Greg Rucka, and under the watchful eye of Bob Schreck and Dan DiDio and Eddie Berganza, we did a couple of crossover events and stuff. And we also really, really wanted to be taken seriously. And, so when people think about like in the 2000s, when those comics got like grim and dark and gritty, and we wanted to be taken seriously, and we, all those dumb articles of like, bam, pow, comics are not for kids anymore. And we really leaned into that. And then suddenly comics were not for kids anymore. And we weren't really exploring that middle ground of like, yeah, when we were kids, you were 8 years old and you could read Spider-Man and Superman and Batman. Everybody could read it, but they still were good stories that had like a lot of depth to it. So I think we kind of got pretty far off of base camp. So when I started doing my own series, which is what I got to, I actually wanted to do it all ages. And exactly what you were saying. What I was concentrating on, and I still concentrate on, is the moms and dads who are comic fans who like an action adventure story. And action adventure stories are mainstream now. I mean, we just talked about San Diego and Marvel and Doomsday. Doomsday is not an R-rated affair, and none of the Marvel movies are not for grown-ups, for everybody. A little bit intense. And that's kind of what I bring to Hilo is it's drawn really goofy like a comic strip, but it gets pretty intense. And the action is like, I do real action, not, I don't want to crack wise about other people's work. And I don't, it isn't about like someone gets a pie in the face kind of action or like, oh,
right.
Like, I don't know, I'd slapsticky whoopee cushion kind of crap. No, people get hit, things blow up.
Things blow up. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes the fights are kind of funny. Sometimes they're funny in how they do their, a little bit of like, quipping, which is, things I had to not teach, but show my editor about like, it's like, well, like this isn't kind of working for me because it's not kind of quippy enough. Like what? They got kind of get wise-assy in the dialogue. What do you mean? Like they got to be joking while they're fighting here because this fight isn't like the real serious fight that we have at the end. That's the serious one. We'll stop quipping. But now we got to like, joke about it, but not I said, you know, when Arnold Schwarzenegger says something like, don't be such a hothead after you light someone on fire, dumbass shit like that, except for kids and not quite so dumb. Then they got it.
No, I understand it's well, when we were kids and it's so funny now, MeTV Toons will run like the Super Friend cartoons.
Yeah.
And there is no violence. And the one I pick on is the Captain Marvel Shazam show from the 70s, where the like most violent thing Captain Marvel does is uproot a tree. And I always say it makes the George Reeves Superman, especially like the first black and white seasons, that's like Pulp Fiction compared to
Yeah.
the violence you're getting in Shazam. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, and again, but I think with the right kind of creator like yourself, you can still give some intensity that isn't too much for the kids to handle. And again, the parents love it. No, you got it, man. The Mighty, your new character. I read the graphic novel, and when you're talking about quippy stuff, it's a girl, and she's kind of a Hulk, kind of a Sasquatch, but
Yeah.
I just love that the running gag of oh my God, it's gonna eat me. I'm not gonna eat you. Relax. That poor kid.
See, that's a joke that plays both ways. That's what I like. I mean, I always think about like my dad likes a good burp joke. My dad's 83 and he cracks up at a good burp joke. And so do the 8-year-olds who write the book. But then there's actual like just a plain old joke. There's something funny about, yeah, she's a 14-foot furry monster. And every time she's like confronted with a criminal, our first running gag is like they just get so scared, like, don't eat me. Like, why does everyone think I'm gonna eat them? She starts to get a little annoyed with this. And it is like kind of universally funny. And that's awesome. It's the first joke that my editor also pointed out, like, I like the eat me gag. That's kind of funny. Like,
Oh, that's good. That's excellent.
again, it's nothing gives me more pleasure than when I hear from parents, because my kids are like young adults now, 21 and 17. But when I was
Wow.
reading, when my wife and I would read to them, now and again, and we won't name names, there's some books you're reading, and it's like, can you read me that one again? It's like, you want to hear that one again for before bedtime? Okay. All right, here we go. Got to read that book again. And you're just like, I would rather just get hit in the head with a croquet mallet. I got to read this book again. And it's just whatever. It's like, it's a kid's book. It's great. They love it. It's sweet. But wouldn't it be great if the ones you're excited about, the ones are like actually like really, they're good reads for everybody, a little bit universal. So I like doing that. And I hear from parents, they like reading Hilo with their kids. They like that they get to do voices. I got one character who is behind my head here. Oh no, her head's cut out. See where that hole is? That's
Oh,
where,
yeah.
okay, that's where Polly, she's a cat. She's an anthropomorphic cat, meaning a cat that acts like a person. And she sounds Scottish. So if you read, you can pick up on the fact that she's Scottish. And so many parents say, yeah, I got to work on my Scottish accent. It's terrible, but the kids like when I do it. She said, it's kind of fun because she's like really rude. I go, yeah, she is. Like, yeah. So it's a lot of fun that the same folks who have read, have read Batman and EXiles and Green Arrow and Green Lantern, parents in their, 30s, 40s and now got little ones of their own, remember superhero stuff. They say like, no, I like it because they like the action counts. It's kind of exciting. You end every one on a cliffhanger. I often hear about from like, book 5 has a massive cliffhanger, which now they don't have to wait for because, we're up to coming up on book 12. So they just get book 6.
Yeah.
But there was a year between book 5 and 6 where there was a massive cliffhanger that my own children, when they were little and reading it, like, Dad, what happens next? And like, they're grilling me, like, don't lie. Just tell us right now. Tell both of them what, that's not happening, right? It's a fake out, right? That's not happening. You're faking us out. Like, tell us. I was like, I'll tell you. You just can't tell anyone else. That's fun too. I mean, I really enjoy how irritated small children get with cliffhangers, and they got it bad. I mean, when they're reading the books in real time, they got to wait a year in between, opposed to when we were doing like monthly comics. And that's something I learned. Monthly comics, you can end on a good cliffy. You're great, which came from my editor, Shayna Corey. Shayna, in the very first Hilo book, the book ended and it was like a bit of a cliffhanger. She said, can you do like a stronger cliffhanger? I said, oh, something that's more painful. She goes, yeah. I said, mean like God damn it, what's happening next? She goes, yeah. I came back with a one. She said, like, I think you can go further. It's like, oh, that's how you want to play it. You want to go, you want to get dirty, don't you? You want to make it people. She said, yeah, put them in pain. I think, okay. And I came back with, it's like, now we're talking. She said, I was a kid, I'd be mad. I go, all right, hey, if you're the editor, you know best. And after that, it's like, okay, my job is like to make them mad. Like, like what's going to happen next? Like that's just purely unfair. And it's like, it's great. And it's also, uh, so when we were kids, we would read, John, you'd read comics inside and out. We'd point to like a page, a panel, something. We knew it up and down. And oh boy, there's no higher praise. Again, I've been doing it for like 11 years. And when I go on a book tour, I just do a couple of bookstores. I almost exclusively go to schools now. And I do assemblies. And assemblies are awesome. Kids are at a level of happiness. They're about like a 9 out of a 10 of happiness anyway, because they're not in class for an hour. But I'm in there so it's like fish in a barrel. I'm talking about cartoons and superhero comics and Hilo. So they love it. It's great. I highly recommend someone do an assembly at a school. Kids love it. But what I really, yeah,
I beg your pardon. I was wondering if you draw as well as talk about the book.
I'll do a full-on presentation with a keynote presentation where it's like, showing, I show like over 100 pictures and take them through a story, and it's the blast. And then I whip out the pad and like, do we have any requests? And it's like doing magic tricks. I just love it. Can you draw Hilo? Sure, of course I can draw Hilo. Well, I can do anything. Like, can you do a monkey eating a fish? Like, I absolutely can do that. Like draw a monkey eating a fish and like, oh, like, and then we're off to the races. And it's like, ask like, Brent, let me do something about Hilo. And it's the best. And then there's the geek kids. Some of them will raise their hand and I got to cut them off and go, that's a spoiler. You've obviously read all the way to the end. Like, so do me a favor when I'm done, come to the stage. We're gonna have a spoiler conversation. It's like, and I'm serious. I'm looking towards your teacher. Let him, her, like they come to the stage and we're gonna have a quick conversation because that's a hardcore fan. That's the one like knows their stuff and we're gonna talk about it. And that's when they come up like close, like, okay, so there's a part there where Hilo says he can't cry. It's like, yeah, it's like, but in book 2, when the army shows up and he pretends to cry, there's all these tears. So what's up when he says in book 6 he can't cry? It's like, okay, so what I did there, Hilo's faking it. I was like, I actually thought about this. I'm not making this crap up. I thought about it. Like, so that's like, he just made like little energy bubbles. So if you look close, it doesn't actually look like tears. It's just things flopping out of his eyes. He said, oh, really? And then they reach in their bag. They got book 2 on them. And like, we're checking it. And just, it reminds me of being like a Comic-Con and there's like some 20-something guy who like calls me out on like some, something that isn't part of canon and whatnot. It's like, no, I thought about it. And if you look carefully, what we said was, I was like, okay. You see, the thing is, the 20-somethings, like, all right, I'll accept that answer. I'm not happy, but I'll accept that answer. Whereas kids are ecstatic. So I'm saying it here. Small children are better fans than 20-something angry geeks. There, I said it. Okay, now you know. Now, mind you,
I get it.
Come find that kid in 12 years. He's an angry geek. I get, okay, but when they're I'm laying the track for everybody else so they can get their bones. They're making their bones reading the the training wheels superhero action adventure comics.
Isn't it interesting though that the libraries are so much better at stocking graphic novels because they got the memo, and of course they did because the librarians are always smart that way. But I mean, I don't know about you when you were little. We had like a Peanuts like coffee table book. And maybe a couple of like the comic strip paperback reprints of like BC and Hagar and Wizard of Id and things like that. But other than that, that was it. And they were constantly obviously checked out because that's all they had. And that's all that was being published. You had Jules Pfeiffer, but I don't remember seeing that in the library. His history of comics.
Oh, yeah, not at all.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing any of that stuff in there when I was a kid.
Okay.
I mean, I got 10 years on you.
I've got him on the shelf here. I mean, I do have a story like spot on. My mom was a teacher. When she retired, the librarian at my elementary school gave her 2 books from the library. One was a Peanuts collection. Another was a superhero anthology, old school, meaning like some of the, is like, Siegel and Schuster Superman was in there, earliest Batman. And I had apparently checked these, they found like the card catalog. I had checked
Sure.
them out dozens and dozens of times, and they had a record of it. They came across it, and like these are the two books that Judd checked out all the time, and we thought you should have them. So
That's
I
fantastic.
got them. She said, I have two books for you, which took it like, oh, like, and when I'm thinking through it, like, I know these so well, like, and it wasn't like the entire, um, it wasn't like an entire issue of Superman. It was like 9 pages. And it also like Gasoline Alley in there and like Terry and the Pirates, other stuff mixed in there. But no,
Yeah.
we didn't have any of that. But I learned when I did my first graphic novel, Pedro May. I was talking about librarians. I heard early on from a uh, one of my editors. It's like, yeah, and librarians are gonna love this. I'm like, yeah, this memoir about my time on the real world that talks about my friend who died of AIDS and has like a lot of education and this and this. Like, yeah, no, they're gonna love it. It's like, okay, because I'm expecting like an old lady with a bun in her hair, which instead it's like, no, these are, we didn't use the word back then when the book came out in the 2000s. Like, these are like super progressive uh people, men and women who they just want kids to read. And they are very, very gung ho about graphic novels. They might set rules down. Like now it's like you can only take out 3 graphic novels at a time, and then you got to take out 1 chapter book. It's like, it's like,
Smart.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and they get it also. It's not like, no, we're not saying that like graphic novels are junk or something, but they read them so quickly. They understand that the graphic novels are like short stories,
Yeah.
that you read them quickly. But now, yes, you're absolutely right. You're not tucked in there with like Peanuts and the various other cartoon collections. Now, I mean, it's quasi new in that when I first started doing Hilo, which was like 11 years ago, um, my small independent publisher, Random House, uh, they had been looking around for a graphic novel series. They wanted to do a series, and they had all these dire wimpy kid imitators coming in, and they really didn't want that. And I was lucky enough they came in here. It's like, that's not this. It's an action adventure story. It's an ongoing story. It was like a 3 book deal coming into it. They were also getting a lot of imitators early on. This is before it completely exploded. Like Raina Tegelmeier, who broke through with Smile. And it should be noted, Raina's book didn't break through right away. She was actually, just as I was talking about going to schools, she was kind of barnstorming schools for like 2 years, doing these assemblies, just I was talking about. And that is how she kind of made a living for a while. She'd go to schools for pay. She'd get a small fee, but
Sure.
she went to a lot of them. And it didn't make the bestsellers list for like 2 years plus. So it took a while for graphic novels for kids to catch on again. I do have a theory, since we're talking about comic strips, that in the late 90s, comic strips kind of took a hit when newspapers took a hit. So when the internet exploded in a real way, and newspapers took a massive hit, and we're talking, from, I don't know, 4,500 newspapers across the country or something down to, below 3,
Yeah.
in the course of just a couple of years. And with that, syndicated comic strips went away.
Yep.
And also people just weren't getting newspapers. And so I believe that kids were not getting that daily diet of 3 pages of comic strips like every day that arrived at your house. Most people, absent of socioeconomic positions, a lot of people always got newspapers delivered to their house. We did this. So we read newspapers every day. Newspapers are kind of inexpensive. So people would get that, and the kids and the grown-ups would read, cartoons, a daily dose of cartoons. Then that went away, and we had kind of a gap, as a sort of cartoon desert. And then we started doing graphic novels for kids. Again, jerks like me and Jeff Johns, Greg Rucka, Dan DiDio, we made them all grim and dark, so they weren't getting their superhero comics, so they weren't getting their fix over there. And suddenly, they're reading cartoons in these book forms. Collections always did well, like cartoon collections always did well, but not stories. And then the explosion happened. I got in right before things blew up. I was lucky. So I just think it swallowed up there. Now, by the time it was big, I already had a good 5 or 6 books on the shelf. And I think that's why there's this Venn diagram of kids love reading cartoons. I think parents who understand that graphic novels are not some evil thing that, it's like my kid's grown up now and they're not reading picture books. Like these aren't picture books. Your child is not 4. They're 9 years old and they want to read something interesting and they want to read something that is of interest to them. And we have all kinds of different stories, science fiction, fantasy, or just, coming of age stories, or Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which is one of the best selling books series in the history of humanity. Simple as that. I'm friends with Jeff Kinney. I got to know him. And
cool.
And let me talk about Jeff Kinney for a little bit, because maybe not enough is even said. For one of the best-selling authors in the whole wide world. He is one of the nicest, most down-to-earth people you would ever want to meet in your whole life. So you can't say that about everybody as successful as he is, and you wouldn't know from hanging with him or talking to him that just how successful he is. And he's great. He's a great dad. He's a great husband, and his influence and the money goes to the right places too. And he keeps making the books because he loves it. He just loves doing it. And he does fun stuff too. Go look up his book tours. Every year, at probably a loss, he does some insane book tour. One year he'd go to schools, he does a game show. I mean, he sets up an entire game show.
Hilarious.
He sets up an entire stage, like professional level looking game show. It's a stage. A couple kids were brought up on stage to compete with local authors. I was one of them one time. He did another one. Last one he did was I'll keep it brief.
I love this.
He did a practical joke. So someone went in pretending to be basically the head of the libraries for the school district. And they had a full auditorium there of kids and they're being scolded. But for one, you guys are being too damaging to the books that come out. And you got to watch that. Secondly, the quality of books that you're taking out is substandard. All of you seem to be taking out like these terrible books, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Do you really need to be taking out garbage books like this? And then one of the teachers says, I'm sorry, I know the kids really love Diary of a Wimpy Kid. She said, I happen to know through a friend, like I know Jeff. Well, I don't know him, but I have his phone number. And she's like, I'd like to call him. She's like, fine, call him. I'm happy to talk to him. And then they call him up on the phone. They get him on speakerphone. Like, you saying you don't like the books? It's like, I don't think they're particularly good books. I don't think they're for kids. And then Jeff Kinney walks out on stage. And the kids had no idea. And then bedlam breaks out. They go insane. They start ripping their clothes off. They can't believe it. Jeff Kinney's there. No, just what was happening though. The negative part was that what he didn't understand is that the kids bought into being scolded so much by the library dude, the dude who headed up the library. They were just so disinterested and bored. They were just like, oh, whatever. You can see like all the unhappy faces, like, oh, this is working too well. I don't know what to do. Like, but by the time he got out there, it was all fine. But so but then he was surprised just how kids were being scolded. Anyway, Jeff Kinney. So
hilarious.
Yes. Yeah, again, he has been someone who was like, Rand Tegelmeyer, Kazu Kibushi does Amulet, Jeff Smith, who did Bone. These are sort of the pillars that held up the graphic novel. Nate Pierce, who did the Big Nate series. I can go on. These are the big guns, the shoulders on which we stand on.
But isn't that wonderful that just like in superhero comics, that you're standing on the shoulders of Marv Wolfman and Frank Miller and guys like that? I mean, no, that's wonderful. And, I've had the pleasure of having Jeff on a group panel once. Yeah. And I got to get Jeff on to do a solo. I know he had his health issues, but I know he's past that. So
he's good now. He's good now. And he's busy and chatty, and he just got a big award at San Diego. So he's
yeah. You told me once about an encounter that you had with one of the classic comic strip people early in your comic strip career.
Oh, let's go top of the mountain. You must mean when I met Sparky.
Indeed, absolutely.
Oh, okay. For those playing at home, Charles Schulz, who never went by Charles, he went by Sparky. And to do a little bit of the backstory, and I'll tell as quickly as I can. So I went to the University of Michigan. I was in the School of Art, and one day I'm in the hallway and I see a flyer that says, "Do you want to be part of the mentor program?" And I went to the dean of the art school, Dean Gene Pijanowski. I went to Dean Pijanowski and I said, "Yeah, I want to meet one of our illustrious alumni. I want to meet Kathy Geiswhite." And he didn't know. I said, "Kathy went went to Michigan? Like, yes, she did. So those all splaying home. Kathy Geiswhite was the cartoonist who did the comic strip Kathy, which ran for many, many years and was the biggest comic strips in history. She was a graduate of the University of Michigan. I was doing a daily comic strip for the Michigan Daily. I was doing it 5 days a week, and I wanted to be a professional comic strip creator. I wanted to get syndicated. I wanted to talk to Kathy. And sure enough, a couple of days later, Gene Pijanowski comes up to me and said, I spoke with Kathy. She'd love to talk with you. It's like, sorry? And she did. She was so generous. And I got to talk with Kathy, and she became my mentor. And every couple of months, I would send her comic strips. We'd read them over. We'd talk about it. She had great advice. Like, I think this is funny. I think it's funny. And then, like, at one point I hit one, she goes, that's your best stuff. Like, what? I had one of my characters, Loomis. His girlfriend dumped him. And she goes, that's the funniest, best thing you've done yet. Like,
wow.
oh, she's like, when it's personal, she goes, it's like right out of the park. So she had great advice. And even when the time came, she walked my comic strip into Universal Press Syndicate. I got a development deal. It didn't work out. But Kathy was my mentor. Now I say that all that to say this, for the National Cartoon Society, they have a conference every year where they give out the Reuben Awards. And there was one in San Diego, and Kathy gave me the heads up. You should come to this one. It's like, why? It's like, a lot of people are coming. Gary Trudeau of Doonesbury fame, who she knew, like, I know you love him and he's a hero of yours. He's going to be there for the first time in over a decade. She said, and Sparky Schultz going to be there. It's like, oh, it's like, yeah, Sparky's going to give a keynote. Like, oh, okay. Wow. So I am nobody, except this is the summer of night. This is not summer. This is spring of 1994. And I am in the middle of filming The Real World for MTV. For those who also playing at home who don't know this about me, 32 years ago, I was on Real World San Francisco. It's a reality TV program to take it was 7 strangers, put them up in a house for 6 months and film them. I'm going to tell you just that. That's all you need to know.
No, yeah, but I'm going to say real fast that literally, because I remember this in a previous conversation of you and I, where you're like, yeah, one week on Entertainment Weekly, it's the cast of Friends. The next week, it's the cast of The Real World, your cast. And yeah. Judd, as I've said many times, I was too old. I wasn't watching Real World. I'm like 5 years older than Judd. And it's just like, oh my God, you had this like whole Real World experience, which is amazing. So we can get back, but continue your story. You know?
Sir, there's a couple years out when you should stop watching The Real World because it gets you feel like a dirty old man. Okay. It's a little bit like, especially some of the latter seasons where it's a lot of like drinking and humping. Like Pam and I basically stopped like this, I don't want to watch this.
I think you met Pam. I mean, of course, Pedro, and we glossed over Pedro and me, your wonderful roommate that sadly is no longer with us. And my God, how relevant that poor Pedro had HIV and was dying of the HIV. And again, we saw it on the show. And then you immortalized him in your graphic novel. But also the good thing, the other wonderful byproduct, you met your lovely wife, Pam, and you guys are still together and have 2 kids. And I mean, so good things came out of The Real World as well.
Amazing things that. Let me circle back to Pedro after. Like, let me tell Sparky. Let me tell this.
Sorry,
and then we'll come right back to Sparky. No, I was upset. Like, I had that feeling like I'm going to go down the rabbit hole talking about Pedro, but what was I talking about? I'm old, and so like, let me finish this. Okay. So, I'm literally like filming The Real World and get this Kathy says, come on down. So, I had to borrow money from my brother to get a plane ticket. In San Francisco, so I flew to San Diego. And go to the conference, and I got to meet Gary Trudeau and talk to him a little bit, and I got to meet Bill Amend, who does Foxtrot.
Yeah.
And what's cool is that I am nobody. Kathy's going around and introducing me. Like Judd is a budding cartoonist, and even said like he had a development deal with Universal, didn't quite work out, but he's very, very talented. But he's also filming this reality show for MTV, which suddenly, no matter who you are, this 1994, I was like, what is that? Sorry now? Like, it's a good icebreaker. And so I got to talk to people. Anyway, one morning, Kathy said, do you want to go have like brunch or like like a little continental breakfast with Sparky? It's like, sorry? It's like, Sparky's coming down. He's just going to grab coffee and a muffin. We're going to sit for a little bit. Do you want to come with? It's like, it took me a couple of us there. It's like, yes. And Kat said, okay. But then she grabs my arm and says, don't talk to him about work. Don't compliment him. It's like, okay. It's like, shit, I'm serious. Like, just don't. And as I know then and later, like, he's actually, despite the fact that he's the most important cartoonist who ever lived, and Mount Everest, the top of the mountain, he's actually very, very humble and he doesn't want to be fawned over, doesn't want any of that. He gets a lot of that. He's aware and whatever. So Kathy told me not to do that, so I wasn't going to do that. So sure enough, it's like me, Kathy Guy White, Sparky Shoals, Bill Amend over here, and we're just talking. Me and Sparky Shoals talking. And Kathy had, like he said, like, so I'm going to University of Michigan, and kids, oh, Kathy went there. It's like, yeah, that's how we met. And she's, I was part of the mentor program. Like, it's sensational. Like, where are you from? I said, I'm from New York, but I grew up on Long Island. He said, oh, are you an Islander fan or a Ranger fan? And I said, I'm not. And I mean, we got into it because he's a huge hockey fan.
Oh yeah.
Enormous hockey fan. I said, I'm a Long Island. I'm an Islander fan. I said, I said Ranger fans. And they said, and the New York Rangers, those guys are animals. They're not, they're not actual human beings. And he was happy to hear that, because it's something that, like any hardcore hockey fan is, crapping on the Rangers is something everybody does. Yeah. And so we talked a little bit of hockey, which I know this much about hockey, but I knew enough to crap on the Rangers to an actual hockey fan, which was good. And then I don't know how we got into it, but then we started talking about how drawing looks better in pencil than inking. And I was just talking to him like, yeah, I'm lousy with brush and quill work. I said, I still use marker. I said, and we're just like talking like penciling and whatnot. And he told me like, yeah, no, I still love it in pencil. I always feel like I ruin it a little bit when I put it back in ink. And I forget exactly how we got into it, that then he said, I still use an old pencil sharpener. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I get a fancy one. I can get an electronic one. He said, electric one, but I don't like the feel of it. He said, it's noisy. So I have an old crank one. I still use it. He said, I just like the feel of it. It makes me feel like I'm back in school. And I said, I love that. And sure enough, years later, when got to visit his studio, they have the Schultz Family Museum in Santa Rosa, which everybody should go to. It's amazing. A hop skip away is his studio, where he used to work, and they've kept it pretty much as he left it. Including when I went there it is. There's a hand crank pencil sharpener, just like he told me. So when asked, like, how was it meeting Sparky Schultz, we got to talk about hockey, and we got to talk about how everything looks better in pencil, and that was fine by me. But, we could die happy. And
that's amazing.
It was also great. I got to tell Kathy, she goes, was that okay? Like, it's like, Kathy, was that okay?
But also, Kathy, God, I mean, hey, I was, a boy in his 20s or whatever when I was reading Kathy, but it was so relatable. And it's cool that was her note to you about getting dumped by the girlfriend and everything. Because poor Kathy, in the dressing room with the swimsuits and everything. And this is years before body shaming and all that stuff. And it's like, no, man, guys freak out about, all right, am I going to look decent in the beach? Or, especially a big guy like me, do I need to wear a shirt? Yes. The answer is yes, by the way. But, but no, that was a great thing. And
she was also enormous. Yeah. Also, there's a great podcast that called ACK, like AAACK. Just look it up, ACK. And it's basically the story of Kathy Guy Swipe, but it also discusses.
Oh, of course, ACK.
ACK. Yeah. Which is what Kathy used to say. And and the podcast is amazing because it's like a 5-parter. It was amazing. It discusses not only her career, which is way more interesting than people could possibly imagine. She started out when she was very, very young. She was the first woman who was syndicated, really, in this way. It became a success. A lot of merchandise. She got a lot of blowback. I mean, as much as people think like giving Kathy shit now is sort of like in vogue, giving Kathy shit back then was also in vogue. She never didn't get shit. For being a woman, for that, it wasn't drawn this way, or it wasn't, or it was trite, or it was about women's issues, or blah, 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 blah. But she, blew open the door for not only syndicated comic strips, which, she had a huge following. Like, she's in a lot of papers, but also was one who was like, made it clear. Like, she lowered the ladder and wanted other women to be able to do this. Lynn Johnston, who did For Better and For Worse, which was one of my favorites growing up, and Raina Tegelmeyer, when Raina talks about influences, she talks about For Better, For Worse. And not long after Raina had said that in a panel, and she talked about that, I had not forgotten, but it hadn't popped up on my mental radar. I wonder, does that still hold up? And I went and got a lot of the old books, and I started reading them. And it's so great. I'd given it to my daughter, who was little at the time. And for better or for worse, still holds up because it's an ongoing serialized story that went on for over 30 years.
Yeah.
All the characters grow up and grow old. Like, the two kids in the book, by the end of the strip, they are married and have children of their own, which has never been done. So it reads like a long graphic novel. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But Kathy, Sparky, comic strips, yes. It was uh, I, I think about it several times a year because it was an amazing little experience within this amazing experience that I was having, that I wasn't even aware of the amazing experience I was having. And I still got to do this. I am pretty sure that Buna Murray, the producers of the show, were able to film. Sparky Schultz gave a keynote, which had never been recorded. So I think it's floating around somewhere on a VHS tape someplace that has to be found. And
Oh my God,
I
yes.
forget every couple of years I got to reach back out. And it's like, we got to get that. It was a great speech. And he gave it then. I think it was the last one he ever gave there. Like not in a maudlin kind of way, but like, yeah, I spoke a couple of times and bing bam boom, I'm done.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting because really when you stack up all of those great strips, old time radio was the same way where we were really getting the best of the medium, and then television came along and it collapsed. Newspapers kind of went down, and syndicated comic strips collapsed. And it's such a shame. And
Yeah.
I mean, I every now and then I'm able to talk to the people that have taken over the things that continue in other countries. Like Gary Gianni was doing Prince Valiant for a long time. I was talking to him. Jim Keefe was doing Flash Gordon. I was talking to him. Most of the adventure strips rather than
Yeah.
the humor strips. But yeah, man, no, that it really is this like lost art in terms of 4 panels and here's the story, here's the gag. But like you said, for better or for worse, this running graphic novel for 30 years, that's amazing.
Yeah. And she was telling a story, which like a lot of them, and this is not a knock. A lot of comic strips are gag strips, even the four
Sure.
panel ones. We're doing, like 3 panels and it's a joke at the end and there's no
Yeah.
story. And then others, and the ones that I really enjoyed, and I'm sure the ones you kind of gravitated to, was like, like Bloom County. Bloom County is why I became a cartoonist, and they would have weekly themes. And so in Calvin and Hobbes, we would do a story a week from Monday to Saturday. It would tell a little story. And when you read them in the collections, you could see the art of doing it. But every day was like we'd continue, like Calvin discovers that he can go inside a cardboard box. He calls it a transmogrifier and turn it into something else. And we do 6 days worth of jokes with that. But it's a little story, and some who are a little more character based, people are going through something, and sometimes they got a little serious here and there. And it's actually what inspired me to do graphic novels, is because I looked to those comic strips and to back up. Okay, several things. One, for those playing at home who don't know, again, I was on a reality TV show back in 1994 called The Real World. My roommate on the show was a young man named Pedro Zamora, who was a 22-year-old AIDS educator and gay activist. Pedro passed away a couple of months after we finished filming the show. I also, another of my castmates on the show was a young woman named Pam Ling, who was a medical student at the time, later a doctor. We started dating after the show. We fell in love and we got married. We've been together ever since. We've got 2 kids, 2 cats, and this house. So life is grand. We've been together ever since.
Yeah.
Now the thing with comic strips and into talking about Pedro, after Pedro passed away, actually even before he passed away, Pedro was supposed to go on a lecture tour, and when he got sick, he asked if I would sub in for him. He said a lot of people are going to cancel because I can't talk there, and they're not going to hear you, but some of them would be okay. He felt bad about canceling. Could you sub in if they'd have you? And I think, yeah, sure. And he basically just gave me the ABCs of what he wanted me to talk about as far as AIDS education and stuff like that. But then gave me the marching orders, like, just tell your story about what it is to know me. They'll have more in common with you than they'll have in common with me. So talk about it. Talk about it's like knowing someone who's living with AIDS. Do that. And that's what I did. I did that lecture. And then Pam also did a lecture as well. And that went on for a couple of years. But then it got to be hard. And I stopped doing it. Just got hard to do. He passed away a couple of months after that. And but it went on for a couple of years. Anyway, I was eventually doing a syndicated comic strip. I got syndicated. It was called Frumpy the Clown. I'm enjoying doing it. And then I was thinking of introducing a character like Pedro, doing one of these more sort of serious stories, like a relative, like an Uncle Peter, and then maybe he comes out as gay, and then maybe later he contracts HIV. Maybe we talk about that in the strip. And as I was working on it a little bit and thinking about it, it just felt a little trite. It felt a little thin. So that's when I decided, like, what if I kind of convert this into like a story, like a book? And at first it was kind of Wind in the Willows-ish, like a lot of text and just some drawings. But because I didn't really see myself as doing a comic book or a graphic novel, because I don't draw like Spider-Man and X-Men. I don't draw like that. But I do I am a doodler, and maybe I could pull off a little bit like Love and Rockets. Maybe I could pull off a little bit like 8 Ball. I still don't draw well as them, but maybe in that vein. So I started slowly, like more and more of the pictures started breaking out until those pictures became panels with word balloons. And suddenly I realized, like, I'm doing a comic book. Like, it took 2.5 years of over and over and over again doing it until I realized, like, okay, now I got a book. It's a graphic novel. And I'd never done it before. Because I always thought, I don't draw like the superhero guys. I don't draw like, I don't draw like Jim Lee. I don't draw like John Byrne. I don't sure as fuck don't draw like Neil Adams, thinking about my heroes. But I draw like me. But when I'd finished the graphic novel, that's when I decided, like, you know what? I don't think I want to do a comic strip anymore. I think this is how I tell stories. So I owe that to Pedro too. I wouldn't have become a storyteller. I wouldn't have done Pedro and Me if I hadn't met him first. And if I hadn't wanted to tell his story. And because I told this story, because I did Pedro and Me, that's how I met Bob Schreck. Or rather, when I had met Bob and I showed him some of my comic strips and stuff, he's like, oh, this is cool. I showed him an early draft of Pedro and Me when it was kind of a graphic novel in pencil. And Bob really liked it. I mean, he loved it. And Bob told me, like, okay, for starters, this is my advice. Get a mainstream publisher. It's like, sorry. It's like, don't go through comic books. Get a mainstream publisher who does books. If that fails, then come back to us and we'll publish it. Oni Press will publish it. Or I'll find somebody in comics who will publish it. Bob was my rabbi and my mentor. I've had great mentors. He was one of them. And, Henry Holt published the book. But after that, Bob and I, were friends. And I did some stuff for Oni Press. And when he went to DC Comics, that's what he led with, which is when, Green Lantern came up. He gave Ron a copy of Pedro and Me just before it came out. And Ron read that and said, like, okay, like, this guy can do some stuff. So again, Pedro and Me led to Bob being able to look to DC and do that and convince Mike Carlin, like, he's never read comics before. Like, it's like, well, let's try him out for a few issues and see how it works. So again, I owe so much to that television show. I owe so much to Pedro. I owe so much to the San Diego Comic-Con and Bob Schreck. That's where I met Bob. I met Bob while I was waiting online to get Kevin Smith to sign a book. So this is 95. And this is when I'm a little bit bullshit famous, meaning that sometimes people know who I was and whatnot.
Yeah.
And what I do is I'd go up to people who I'd admire, introduce myself, and just hope, maybe they know me, maybe what. And so this is when Kevin was big, but not like enormous. And
like Clerks big.
Clerks big. Chasing Amy had just come out.
There you go.
And he was doing comics for Oni Press. And he was also signing a script book, which was the script of Chasing Amy and Mallrats in one edition. So I bought that and I had him sign it. And I said, so I was like, hey, how's it going? And I said, yeah, can you sign it to Pam and Judd? And like, nothing. No, just no record. And he just signed it to Pam and Judd. Who gets the book if you guys break up? With a big like heart under it, And it's like, okay. So Kevin Smith didn't recognize me. So that didn't happen. But when I'm getting offline, I'm looking and Bob Schreck is like 20 feet away at the table. And he's looking at me. He's like, oh, he recognized me. And so I'm just going to go introduce myself. So I can tell you, like, we're making eye contact. I shake his hand and I say, it says Bob Schreck. It's like, and like, I read comics. I'm like, oh shit, this is Frank Miller's editor. This is Bob Schreck who like, he's Frank Miller's editor. And I was trying to be cool about it. But he was mostly like, oh, you know who I am? It's like, yeah, no, like, Bob, you were at Dark Horse for a number of years. I said, and I said, you're tight. And also, you're tight with Matt Wagner. And like, it's like, yeah, I knew his running buddies as well. And
sure.
like I got to meet Matt Wagner not long after that. And that was huge. I've known Matt for 30 years, and
Love Matt.
Wagner's another mentor. Like Matt.
Absolutely.
Oh, Matt was like the tough love older brother of comics I needed.
Oh,
Who,
cool.
like, his advice was always the first 100 pages of write and draw are garbage. So when you get to page 101, it's going to be a little bit better, but you got to get those past those first 100 pages. Like, okay. So anyway, that's how I met Bob, because Kevin Smith didn't recognize me. And then we just got to talking about stuff, and I showed him my comic strip, and so I did owe that to television.
Did Bob was, because am I right? In Green Lantern, when you were doing it, didn't you introduce a kid with AIDS, a friend of Kyle's?
It was a couple of things throughout our tenure together, working together. So there was Kyle Rayner we made him a professional cartoonist who was doing a comic strip for kind of a magazine like Time Out, sort of like that. Like it was sort of like kind of hot shit slick New York.
Hipster magazine. Absolutely.
Yeah, before we were calling them those, but yeah, back in the day. And he needed an assistant, so his assistant was a 16-year-old kid who was closeted. And eventually he came out. And this was born out of, it was actually Ron and Bob's idea back in the day. It was after Matthew Shepard was killed. And for those playing at home, Matthew Shepard was a young man who was gay and was beaten to death by 3 other young men. He was like 16, and it was awful. And they wanted to do a story about a hate crime. And what they did not want to do, they didn't want to do it like a TV movie of the week or like an after school special. So when Ron and I talked about it, he's saying like, what I'd like is ideally you introduce a character and let that character grow and kind of thrive and become a character. And then this second piece is that maybe they're a survivor of a hate crime. So that's where that happened. So the character's name was Terry Berg. He was Kyle's assistant. And first we had the story where he kind of comes out and comes to terms with who he is. And his sexuality, and then later he's a survivor of a hate crime. And so Bob was my editor on that one. And then when we did Green Arrow, Mia Dearden, who would later become Speedy. So 2 things. One, Kevin Smith introduced her as a character.
Yep.
She was going to be Speedy, which seemed like she had all the earmarks of being Speedy when Kevin introduced her. But then he was getting some pushback from readers, and like justifiably so, saying, in this day and age, would Oliver Queen put a 16-year-old on the streets fighting crime? Would he do that? And Kevin's like, no, he wouldn't. It's like, he wouldn't. It doesn't feel right anymore. This teenager, I'm going to put her in danger. He said, so she's going to like be his ward. He's going to be like an adoptive daughter. She was a runaway. She was a sex worker, so like a teen prostitute. So she had a very, very rough and terrible upbringing. And I had thought where he was going with this story is like, oh, I bet she tests positive. I bet she's gonna be living with HIV at some point. But then Kevin finished up his run. Then my buddy Brad Meltzer took over for about a year. And then I came in after Brad. And that's when Bob and I were talking about it. And I said, well, 2 things. One, I think it'd be interesting if Mia tests positive for HIV. He said, I thought Kevin was going that direction. And Bob said, no, I don't know if he was. He said, I don't know if he was. Maybe he was. It's like, we had never talked about it. He said, but it sort of like tracks as far as the life she led, that she was having unprotected sex. So she was put at risk. So it would make sense.
Sure.
But also, we aged her up a little bit. She was like 17 and change, almost 18. It's not a kid anymore. But also part of it was, this was something she wanted to do. It wasn't like Ollie was putting her in costume to do it. Like, I don't know what my life's going to be. And this is going back a little bit before combination drug therapy made it so that you could live with HIV, probably a very long and fruitful life. You could have a short lifespan because of the illness, because of the virus, because of the disease. So her pitch to Ollie was like, I don't know how much time I have, and I want to do this, and I want to help people. And I think I'm good at this. And I think I can make a difference. And with that, Oliver Queen is like, it overrode the idea, like, I think you're putting yourself at risk. It became more, who am I to stand in your way? Because you're doing what we want to do. You want to be a hero. Why? How can I tell you can't do that? I'm a rich guy who puts on a costume and, shoots arrows at bad guys and runs into burning buildings and puts my life at risk every minute of every day, practically. Who can I say? And it just made sense. The story just tracked. So, yeah, both these things were born out of my friendship with Pedro. These were stories which were not his story, but touched upon his experience in a lot of ways. Um, and, thankfully, a lot of people read it. A lot of people were moved by it. We also, Frank Language took a lot of shit for it. Uh, not the right kind of shit, just, but shit. In the early days
Yeah.
and by the way, in the early days of discourse, pre-social media, this is when we had message boards. So a lot of crap on the message boards about it, but I didn't care. I thought they were good stories, and they were important stories, and so I'm telling a handful of these sort of stories which are more have social messaging embedded into them, along with, there's lots of fight scenes of people beating the crap out of each
Yeah,
other,
there are.
and and bringing Jason Todd back from the dead, and just,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
plenty of stuff where I'm feeling like, look, guys, I mean, I quickly got a reputation of like, I'm a guy like he's always on a soapbox, always doing those things. Like, I don't do those things very often. I've done a couple of these stories. It's mostly, guys and gals in costumes beating that crap out of bad guys. That's pretty much what I'm doing.
Oh yeah.
Happily too, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. No,
I
man,
love
I
doing
was
that
on the
too.
right. I was
Mhm.
on the right as a reader. No, man, and I saw the discourse that came against you, and it's like, hey, man, he's still writing good stuff. But I'm
Yeah.
really glad you mentioned Oliver and his attitude toward, and also that choice of I'm not going to put a kid in jeopardy, kind of, and because as you know, the initial Green Arrow stories, he was a Batman clone in the 40s and 50s, and
Yeah.
they really were just Batman stories with arrows and everything.
He had
So
a car. He
yeah,
had
the
the Arrow
car, the
car.
cave. You know, all the, I mean, I remember when Brad put all the iconography back during
Yeah.
his run and everything. But as people like Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams took the character, it was like, no, no, no. There's a contrast between millionaire Oliver Queen and millionaire Bruce Wayne. And
Yeah.
the great one is because I did a panel of it was Denny O'Neil, Mike Barr, Jim Starlin, Tim Seeley at the time was writing Robin, and it really was a Robin panel
Wow.
and they
Wow.
all were. I mean, especially Denny's like, what sane man puts a 12-year-old kid in a costume? And if anything, Robin, especially in that bright costume, is a target. Batman's in the shadows. Robin, here's red, here's green, here's yellow. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
really funny to think about it that way. And I'm like, oh my god, you're right. But the great thing is, Jason comes along. He's the second Robin, and I think inadvertently Jason's his shit. Jim Starlin talked about that when he did Death in the Family and everything. And that major, massive thing. I voted on the 900 number. I voted to get rid of Jason. I wasn't a fan and everything. And it was really interesting. And then we get the teaser of Hush,
Yeah.
Jeff Loeb, Jim Lee, and
Yeah.
you get this wonderful moment. And it's, just this pantheon of Batman villains. And this
So good.
great moment where he's in the graveyard and there's adult Jason Todd in a very adult costume, and he's got a little gray streak in his hair, and it's like, what the fuck is this? And of course, it
Yeah.
was a big fake out because it was Clayface. Take the story from there. What happened?
Oh, well, I mean, for one, like Hush was amazing. Jeff Loeb, Jim Lee. It's a great run. I'm reading it just like everybody else. Uh, while, and I'm working at DC. I'm writing Green Arrow. I'm writing Outsiders. Um, and when they got to uh, Batman is in the graveyard with Hush and he takes the bandages off and it's Jason Todd, that he got thrown into the Lazarus pit and he's come back. I was like, oh man, like as a storyteller, my heart just exploded like in the best way. Like this is gonna be great. Because they figured it out. Like they threw him in the Lazarus pit, and now he's come back. He's like, Jason is his biggest failure, and it weighs on Batman. And I just saw this opera, like 100 miles of broken road. He's come back, and they managed to figure out a way, like it doesn't undo it. He hasn't come back, and he's a hero. He's come back wrong, and he's going after Batman. Like this is great. I love it. I thought like this is a great story. And here he is torturing Batman. He's like, he's for whatever, and it was great. And then next issue, then they took it back. Turns back it's Clayface. It's like, oh, Well, that's another way to go. Okay. I mean, that's really what I thought. Like, oh, okay. Like,
We all did, yeah.
yeah, it's like that to me seems a little bit like a wasted opportunity, but okay. I mean, the fake out was a great fake out. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. So when it got to be my turn to write Batman, um, I pitched it to Bob. He's like, "What do you think of doing?" I said, "Like, I think I want to bring back Jason Todd for real." And in all honesty, Bob did not like the idea. He thought it was gimmicky. He felt it was cheap, and he didn't want me to do it. But I wouldn't let go of it. And Bob, and I should mention, this isn't because Bob was my friend, which he was and he is. It's because he was a really good editor, and he could tell it meant a lot to me, and he believed in me as a writer. Again, he just could have said, like, no, we're not doing it. Do something else. But I wasn't adamant about it, but I was very passionate about it. And that story goes, I don't get it, I don't like it, but if you want to do it, we'll do it. So I started doing it. And it was literally several issues in, like not one, but like four. And that's when Bob came back around and said, okay, I was wrong. It's like, I get it now. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, no, I'm reading it now. He said, I had an image in my head. And what you're doing is, he said, is way more emotional. It's way more interesting. He said, I mean, in truth was, he gave me credit for what actually came to fruition, which is like, like whatever, I guess you'll make it great, whatever, we'll do it. And, but he couldn't quite see it. But when he saw it, it's like, no, it's great. It's great. And of course, we'll keep doing it. So I owe it all to Bob, even though he didn't want to do it. He didn't like it. He was like one of the naysayers when it was coming back there, and said, we shouldn't do this. We shouldn't undo this thing. It's too big a thing. But when he saw I was doing, the story itself, and, it was my dumb idea, from sort of like from top to bottom, when I pitched it to, not even pitched it. I wouldn't even say pitching. Like, this is what I was doing. And I was telling Dan DiDio about it. And Dan, again, also friend of mine then, friend of mine now, but we're there at San Diego. San Diego comes up again, having breakfast. Dan's having his fourth breakfast meeting. And he just set this up. He wanted to hear what I was going to do on Batman. I said, I want to bring back Jason Todd. He said, oh, so you really want to do that? Like, he'd heard from Bob. So, but you really want to do that? And he said, like, so what's the story? And I kind of gave him the machinations of it. And I told him the ending. Spoiler, I'm going to talk about the ending. Not the ending, but what it's really about, which was in the end, Jason's going to snatch up Joker. He'll be confronting Batman. And Batman, some hook or some crook, will say, Jason, I am sorry that I didn't save you, meaning save your life. And Jason said, do you think that's what this is about? Do you think that's what any of this is about? That you didn't save my life? Like, no, it's not about that. I forgive you for letting me die, but I don't forgive you for letting him live, meaning Joker. He took me away from you and you didn't kill him. And that actually, I had Dan on the edge of his seat. He's like, oh, that's how it ends? Like, yeah. It's like, okay, go write that. I don't need to hear anything else. Do that. That's where it ends. It's like, yeah. Then the building will blow up and then Jason disappears. We don't have, like, I don't care after that. Like, that's it's like, that's, yeah. It's like, okay, cool. And then I got to do it. And I'm just proud as punch. It's been years. It's been over 10 years since we did the animated movie. It's been years. I don't know what the number is since we actually did the book. And Jason's still kicking around. And yeah. I think I lucked into in creating Jason Todd Red Hood is that it filled a spot for a couple. It didn't undo the tragedy. Jason still died under Batman's watch, and Batman has to live with that. And it's still his biggest regret. And the fact that he's come back and come back bad, it doesn't negate the fact that it almost makes it worse. Like, it isn't just, I just lost my, one of my adopted sons here, my little soldier, but now he's come back and he's wrong. Everything I taught him, he's using it against me. It's like, it's ugly. And Dick Grayson and Bruce have always been kind of at odds, a little bit. They've always been like, like Dick doesn't do things exactly the way Bruce does, isn't that, but it was always, I thought, and other people would say, like, yeah, it's always been a little bit soft, like he's a lot like Bruce, but he's not exactly like Bruce. But now we have an example that sort of fits the slot of like, this is the bad son. Trying to do Dick Grayson as the bad son, and many of us tried to do that. It's like, it doesn't really work. He's not bad. He's Dick Grayson. He might disagree with Bruce. Why? Because I don't know. He has more empathy. He's more of a human being than Bruce was, and that's sometimes difficult to sort of work. But when you have Jason over here as the example, like, no, this is the bad son, whereas Dick's actually the good son who might, like, you know, look to Bruce now and again. It's like, just shut up, old man. Like, you know what we're talking about. You know, he's like, he just pushed back. He lovingly will push back on the big guy, or not so lovingly. You know, and then Tim Drake occupies another spot. And then there's Damian, who is, like, you know, a little force unto himself, is a whole different animal. You know, four Robins now, you know. John, but when we revisit this in a couple of years, we're gonna, like, Robin number 5 coming down the pike, I guess, at some point. You know, I don't know.
Sure.
You know, it's somebody might say, like, I think we have enough Robins. I think
Well,
it's 4
they
now.
have the one the signal was somebody that Scott Snyder introduced.
Yeah.
And it was and essentially taking the place of a Robin. But no,
Right.
I get it. And also, God, you know, for years before the revival, you know, he had Jason's costume in the glass tube in the Batcave honoring him. And
Yeah.
yeah, man, no, it was like the memorial, and again, Batman's big regret. And also the cartoon got John DiMaggio as Joker. It was a much darker. I mean, you had traditional Joker in the comic, and then you write the cartoon, and DiMaggio. I don't know if it was in your script or John's performance or both, but this was a big physical, could beat the shit out of, you know, Jason and everything, and that wonderful scene when Damian is pouring his heart, or rather, Jason is pouring his heart out to Bruce, and is ready to kill him, and the Joker is possibly facing death, and he loves it. And he
Yeah.
could not be more excited that, again, much like we were saying earlier about Sinestro and Hell, it's like, you know, the Joker has Bruce's numbers and is happy to push them. And again,
Oh.
it was, so what a performance. And truly, man, great cartoon. And of course, it's your own story that you adapted. Well done.
We'll end on John, then circle back. So the fun of it is, like, having them come to life. You know, you get the story, get the right story, and it comes to life. And John brought so much to it in, like, the best way. Yeah, he's just a gruffer. Joker just sounded like, and John's not a small guy, but he could do small voices if he has to. But he also shows that, you know, he's a big dude and he's got like a big voice. And that's where, I mean, just Joker's just a more of a baritone and tougher and just a little more sinister in that way. And not kind of like, not like ripping off. Like, it didn't feel like Nicholson. It didn't feel like Mark Hamill. He's still doing a Joker, but he's doing his own Joker. And then at the end, which is like, that's when he delivers the goods. Like, yes, it's the scene where Joker, Batman, and Red Hood are in a building, a bomb's about to go off, and Batman's about to stop the bomb, and Joker tackles him. And he's so excited, like, no, no, don't do it. Let it happen like this. Like, we all go out together. Like, what could be better than this? The Agent of Chaos comes out in the biggest way. And, you know, they animate off the vocals, you know, and like Joker's so wide-eyed and he's giggly. Orgasmic is the way director Brendan Minetti described it. And it is one of these things where the actors will always tell you, you know, some of them, voice actors won't go in there and tell you this, but actors who are like not full-time voice actors, like, I came in there, I worked for an hour, you know, and what they want to do is they want to give credit to all the animators who put a lot of work into it, and the storyboard artists put a lot of work into it, who spent months and months and months and years to do this. Like, they came and recorded their stuff in like an hour or two, and they're out. But what they bring to the table, they bring those years of expertise, including like John, you know, and John was like the last one cast. He was the only in the cast, the only one who's like a voice actor, you know, who has less on-screen credits than other people. But man, the animated movie was so fun. I was so pleased we got to do it. It came about as simply as not long after Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight came out. I had heard the grapevine that the animated folks at Warner Brothers were looking to do like a darker, grittier Batman story. And that's what we were doing, darker, grittier. And I was like, well, hell, I'm going to go pitch them my Red Hood run. And Gregory Novak, who was heading up a lot of the multimedia stuff at that point, and I knew for a couple of years prior to this, and from other like running around Hollywood stuff, I pitched it to him, and he really liked it. And then I had to pitch it to Bruce Timm and Alan and the rest of the gang. And the funny part of that story is that Bruce told me this later. Bruce, who was the executive producer of the animated film, he told me he was going to pass without even hearing the pitch. Like, it's like, this is not going to work. And his feeling was like, you can't do Under the Red Hood without doing Death in the Family. You got to do all Death in the Family. You got to do the whole thing with Joker and Robin and him getting kidnapped. And it's like, and like in Jason and his mom, like, there's a whole bunch of story that you got to get to. And we're not going to do that. He said, so how do you possibly do it? So my pitch was, it's just, and for those who've seen the movie know, I do a teaser and it begins with the end of Death in the Family. It's just Joker has got Robin, Jason Todd, in a warehouse. He's beating him to death with a crowbar, and Batman is racing on the Batcycle trying to get to him before he dies. And then Joker leaves him there. He blows up the building and he dies. And that's the teaser. And then we begin our story like 3 years later. And Bruce told me later, he said, like, when you got to when you're telling it in the teaser, it's like, he's doing it in the teaser. Oh, we don't have to tell Death in the Family. We just tell this part. Oh, he cracked it. And he said, I don't remember what you said after that. It didn't matter. They're like, oh, we're doing this now. Now we're doing this. And I later tell, I mean, he told me very, very late, like we'd finished the movie. And he told me, you know, that's where he was at. I said, are you shitting me? He says, no, I wasn't going to do it. He's like, no, but you cracked it. He said, and you cracked it simply. He said, it was a really good lesson. Like, yeah, we'll do that. And the fun of writing it was that I just got to take, you know, the 2-year arc and just use the fun parts. I'm not doing a monthly comic, just the cool parts, you know, just the arc of it. And also, you know, really good producers who gave me good notes about massaging it in just the right way. And it still holds up. I mean, Jason Todd holds up as a character. The animated movie still holds up as a movie. It's always very, very flattering. It's still in the zeitgeist what people are talking about. Even when they're talking about live action films versus, okay, you know, I'm gonna shit on Batman and Robin, the live action one. Like, you know, when people talk about like good Batman movies, he always does better than that. But you know, kind of low bar, but still. But it was fun. These were all good times. And going back to San Diego, one of my best professional experiences of my whole life was, look, people make movies and then they go and watch it with an audience. They don't get to watch it with 5,000 people, literally, who are diehard fans. So they premiered it in Hall H at San Diego. And so I'm there, me, the producers, the director, my wife, Pam, Brad Meltzer. Brad came in, his oldest son was there. And so, you know, it's just shy of like going to your own wedding with 5,000 people, and to get the reaction from everybody and to feel that vibe in the room. And then afterwards, getting to go up on stage, and it also is funny. And the actors were so good about it. Like the audience could not give 3 shits about me and Brendan Vanetti, the director. They could not care. They just want to hear from the actors. And that's when it comes out, when they say like, I worked an hour and a half on this. It's just so embarrassing. Like, you know, there's all this, but anyway, it's like, you know, being in the room, hearing them cheer when shit happens, hearing them, you know, make, you know, and like, you know, just react to it. Like, it's the greatest. And, you know, you do, you know, big ass movies don't get to show them in front of 5,000 people. You know, and you could hear a pin drop and you could hear thundering laughter. It's the best. It was the best. I highly recommend it to anybody. Go to an auditorium and do a presentation for a bunch of 3rd graders at some point and have them show the movie you wrote in front of 5,000 people. One of those things is easier to accomplish, I'm sure.
We're split by it, man. That's excellent. Well, you know, and people don't remember, and you'll forgive me, but I hope we still have time for some other greatest hits of your years. But, you know, going back to Infinite Crisis, you know, because people always give it up to Jeff Johns for doing a lot of heavy lifting. But you, Rucka, Wade, you guys were all there. And I mean, for Infinite Crisis, what specific, because again, that was a big event that led to 52, and I want to mention 52, but because I know you almost were involved in that. But what part of Infinite Crisis, was there a specific story part that was yours in terms of what you brought to the event?
Oh boy. Well, planning Infinite Crisis.
Ancient history.
Well, we planned it. It was me, Greg Rucka, Jeff Johns, Dan DiDio, Eddie Briganza. And we were Dan took us, we went to the Warner Brothers lot, and just for fun, I guess, fun slash inspiration. It was a blast. And, and he got us a room, and we got a giant whiteboard, and we made a crossover, and kind of duked it out in a room. I don't want to say duked it out, because there was a lot of mostly agreement about how to do a crossover, and Dan wanted, like, let's do a crossover and let's do it right. We know all the mistakes from reading them when we were kids and also working in comics, how they screw it up. But what's a good story? Let's a really good story. And we sat there for 3 days, and we would come up with ideas. And then later we had dinner with Jeff Loeb. And one time we were there with Wade, and we were telling them what we were working on. They were also giving their marching orders, because each of them was writing 3 books anyway as well. So they were going to bust this out as well. And then they had ideas to come back, and then we would rework it for a while. And it was fun, and it was creative, and it was like everything in just the right way. And it worked. It was a big deal. And everyone had a lot of fun. Everyone got to write, because between the 3 of us, we were writing a lot of the bigger books. And so we're going to spit it out of that one, spit it out of that one. And it was so much fun. It really was. It was like a really good time. And then, of course, it went so well. Dan said, let's do it again. We're going to do 52. We're going to do a weekly. And at the time they were doing it, I just started doing an animated series for Cartoon Network. So I started doing the life and times of Juniper Lee. And with respect, so Dan, who's my friend, and Jeff and Greg, these are my friends.
Yeah.
And me turning around saying, yeah, I'm doing an animated series for Cartoon Network. I don't have time. They don't give a fuck. So, I mean, what I mean is like, you're not going to come play in the sandbox this time because you're doing some TV show. They didn't give me a hard time, but they weren't happy. They weren't happy because they wanted to get the band back together, and I'm not doing it. And I'm saying, I'm doing this animated series. I'm writing 3 monthlies, and my wife and I just had a baby. And by the way, the show I'm doing, we're doing it in Burbank. I live in San Francisco. I'm commuting to Burbank for 3 days a week to work on the show. And they wanted me to like do New 52. Dan gave me every possible way they could work on, not New 52, 52. It's originally called 52, to work on the weekly. Like maybe you could just pitch story ideas, maybe just edit like Dan, I don't have the time. I can't do it, and like, I'm not like the 3 monthlies I was writing. I'm doing Batman. I'm doing Green Arrow. I'm doing Outsiders. And I want to say it was like First Thunder might've been there as well. Like I was doing the Superman Captain Marvel miniseries at the time.
Yes.
Anyway. So like it's not like I'm just sitting there like with my feet up, but my friends were pretty pissed at me for a while. And I would say they were for a long while. I don't think we got good work wise after that for a long time. Cause they felt like I walked away from my day job, and but we're all fine, we're all family, it's all cool. But yeah, they wanted me on that one too, but I was still always in the mix at DC, and still doing big books. But that was my first big step away from doing monthly superhero comics, even though I did it for years after. After doing Juniper Lee, I spent a good 3 to 4 years plus developing live action television on top of writing superhero comics, which went nowhere except almost getting a TV show or 4. Every year pilot season would come around. We still had pilot season. I would come up with a show. I would pitch a show. And every year I sold the show one time to NBC, and I wrote the pilot and it never got shot. That's as close as I got. And that was actually my first year doing it, which was like bad because it gave me a taste for it. And I was like, that was easy. I'll do it again. But I spent about 4 years, maybe 5 years, always getting kind of to the top of the pyramid where I was pitching the head of the network, and then them passing or me writing something up and getting some money for it. I never got a show. And that actually led to Hilo. So it's a perfect dovetail. I mean, Juniper Lee, not doing 52, doing live action television, and then into Hilo, because when my agent came back one year after like 5 years of trying to get a live action show up, he said, so what's the show going to be this year? I said, I don't think I want to do this anymore. It's like every year I come up with a show and I get really excited and invested in it. I really work myself up, and then I spend 4 months pitching like this one in this room, then I pitch this one, then I pitch this one, and then I pitch the head of the network, and they go like, "Yeah, we got another spy show that's being done by this guy who's already done 4 shows, so we're going to go with that." But thank you. Um, and I got offers to work in a writer's room, but then I would have to move. And my wife Pam had a very good job at the University of California, San Francisco as a doctor and a professor. Anyway, that's why I told my agent like I don't want to do this anymore. And that's when my 7-year-old son wanted to read my Batman run, and I told him no. And then I gave him Jeff Smith's Bone, and he went so bananas for Bone, I got jealous. He loved Bone so much. And then I told Jeff that my son went crazy, go nuts for Bone, and Jeff sent us this giant box of merch. Like he sent us everything. T-shirts, hats, action figures, calendars, everything. And my son was like a Bone super fan. Then I got really jealous. And it's like, I can do that, I think. And that's why I started. And then I did Hilo. I did on spec. I wrote and drew an entire book in pencil. So that is how that happened. And now here we are. Hang on. I actually have it sitting right here.
Yep.
Hang on. I just bumped it up. Absolutely. Wait, no, even better. Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay, down on the camera. Oh, here we go. There's a decade of work.
Wow. Look at that, everybody.
This is the boxed set, my friends. And this ain't even all of them. So, and for fun for me to say wraparound cover. When they're talking about the box is so big, what do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to do a wraparound cover. It's like, like you do in the comics. It's like you guys know that. Like, what does that mean? Like wraparound cover. Yeah, it's again, now that we've come literally full circle here. Doing superhero comics, doing a comic strip, doing an animated series, getting my head kicked in by live action TV, disappointing my friends at DC Comics by stepping away a little bit. It all led to me put all that stuff into one big old box, which wound up being Hilo, which I'm very proud of it. Again, nothing pleases me more than having some 8-year-old dig it, and then their mom who used to, it's like, oh no, and I really dig it too. And you might tell me something like, yeah, no, and I read your Green Lantern run back in the day. It's like, you, lady, you read Green Lantern back in the day? Like, no, yeah, I always did for this and that. Like, you'd be surprised. I'm very, very surprised level of like the comic fans that come out of meeting parents. That some of them, because frankly, I mean, John, the story, you've been out long enough. You tell like, yeah, no, I you can say like, no, I'm a journalist and radio personality and podcaster for comic books. Like, oh, I read Archie when I was a kid. It's like, okay, and you're just like, yes, I understand you read Archie when you were a kid. It's like, do you know about Archie? And I'm sure he's like, I know a lot about Archie. I can talk about Archie, but yes, now we're in an era, and a lot also because of the MCU and the amount of superhero stuff that's on television, and people have returned to comics, and they're a lot more aware. So in a case of like, where's here? So in the case of like The Mighty, and The Mighty born out of, which came out this past February, I was doing Hilo for about a decade. And so I'm doing like, I have Hilo as my Superman story, which is the little boy comes from a different planet, and I got him in the suburbs, and it's a mystery of who he is. He has amnesia and whatnot. I was like, I've been telling the story. I'm not tired of it, but I kind of want to like scratch a different superhero itch. And like, who do I love? It's like, I love Hulk. I love Spider-Man. And I really like drawing Bigfoots. Sasquatch, like she's got the Sasquatch vibe, both in like the Alpha Flight vibe and also the stereotypical what Sasquatch looks like.
Sure.
And it's like, what if I do this one? It'll be an urban setting because I hate drawing buildings and I want to challenge myself. And just different from Hilo in that, it's a little more old school that she suddenly has these powers. Like she's like a 12-year-old girl, and one day she turns into a 12-foot furry monster. What does she do? She decides to not tell her parents and fight crime, you know, like Peter Parker, like any of the stuff we grew up with. And it's like I'm same tropes, but I'm getting to do it differently. And the kiddos are what's fun. What's great with storytelling is like often you don't want to get ahead of your reader that they don't know at all what you're doing. So if there's familiarity, even if they look at this and say like feels a little bit like Spider-Man, it's like, yeah, that's okay. But she's a 12-foot furry monster. But they also actually they wanted to know if I was ripping off a Turning Red from Pixar. So Pixar is, for those who might not know, that was a movie that came out not too long ago, a very, very good movie about a little girl who can turn into a like 14-foot red panda. And I was putting the finishing touches on The Mighty when I had just heard about this movie. And it would have been easier if you killed me because like the book was like done. So I'm lucky enough to actually have friends at Pixar. So I called them and said, okay, all right. Please hear me out on this because I know you can't talk about the movie. But I saw a picture of it and I heard tell it's about a little girl who can turn into this giant red panda. I'm doing a book about a little girl who can turn into a purple Sasquatch. I'm going to tell you about the book and I want you to tell me if it's the same story. And it's like, okay, so this, it turns out she starts fighting crime. And I was like, oh, no, they've got nothing in common. Like, seriously? It's like, no, they're completely different. Like, okay. so when I go back to my publisher and I tell them we got nothing to worry about, it's like, you've got nothing to worry about. It's like, now you're not going to pull like a Toy Story 2 thing. We're going to change the whole movie like at the 11th hour and redo it. Like, no, we're putting this movie out. It's happening. It's like, okay. But that was that.
Yeah.
John, I don't know what movie I'm quoting, but like, John, that was when I was most scared.
I don't know either, but I know the quote. Absolutely.
Just
hilarious.
I'd finished a book and suddenly just seeing a poster like, sweet God in heaven. Like that's like 2 years of my life. Like, oh no. Because it would be the sort of thing that Ram has like, I don't know if we could put out a book that's exactly the same as a Pixar movie.
Yeah, it was Armageddon and Deep Impact coming so close to each other and everything. Man.
Yes.
It's like, oh fuck. I thought we were the original idea. No, I get it, man. Absolutely. Well, and also, my God, you are building your pantheon of Hilo heroes now with the Mighty and everything. So I would imagine the inevitable crossover is coming.
It is, and I thought for a little while that I was going to keep that a little bit under wraps. But when I was doing the book tour for like the 11th Hilo book, and I was announcing like, in the next book is a whole new in the series being the Mighty, and I do again, I like to do a keynote presentation. Up on the screen comes the cover of the Mighty, and I talk about it a little bit. Invariably, just about and I do a Q&A at the end where kids ask me questions every time. Nearly every time a kid would raise their hands like, so is the Mighty ever going to meet up with Hilo and they are going to like have an adventure together? It's like, how the hell do you guys know about crossovers? And it's like, right, the Marvel movies, you've grown up with crossovers. It's in your DNA at this point. So I had to tell them like, yeah. I was like, why even hide it? It's like, yeah, okay, yes, they will. And I'm doing a new series as well. Like will be coming out like 2028. So a whole new series. And I'll just say this is that I'm building up more heroes to what will be an eventual end of the serialization for Hilo. Like there's like 4 more books in me. And what I want to do is I'm doing like an end game sort of thing where the Mighty and these new heroes and Hilo and the whole Hilo gang of Gina and, Gina who does magic and DJ, we're all getting together like a big ass adventure at the end, which will wrap things up and end us in a place where when I do Hilo, I'm going to do like one-off adventures, not like a long serialized one. And I can still do the Mighty and these other heroes as well. But again, all out of comic books. That was my pitch to Random House about doing more heroes, which was that, we come from a place where we're like, we need lots of heroes. And when I did it, like I did the pitch, and I gave it to him like, it's like, basically like 9 pages of stuff, but it had a picture of Spider-Man and Batman and Superman. Like, it's like the beauty of superhero comics is you have lots of heroes. So if Hilo is our Superman, well, we should branch out. So here's this one, here's this one, here's this one. And I look forward to it. I'm not a kid anymore. Hopefully I have plenty of time to keep telling these stories in this way, and doing action adventure stories for kids, which is my first love. I'll probably branch out and do some other stuff here and there, just because, I'll hear that siren song of like, don't you have some kind of coming of age story like Raina Tegemeyer does? It's like, yeah, I kind of do.
a boy.
Don't you have an adult story you want to do that has like a fair amount of violence and cussing? Like, yes, I do.
Yeah.
And that'll happen. Like, I know, John, I know you're a fan of my series Caper.
My man, truly Jewish mob story. Everybody,
Uh,
Focus. I'm going to say was the imprint that it came from. Because
no,
Dan
no,
kind of created his own wing within DC that were not superhero stories, and Caper was such a big part of that.
I think that happened after the fact because Karen Berger
Oh,
got delightfully, in a good way, annoyed with Dan when they came out. By the way, no one bought Caper; it did terrible, but everyone liked it. It got very very well reviewed. But I pitched it to Bob and wanted to like, can we do this? Can you still be my editor? I want to do it with you. It's like, it should be under Vertigo. He goes, we have to do it under Vertigo. And like, he just asked Dan, like, Judd wants to do a 12-issue maxi series, like 3 crime stories, 3, 3, and 3. Is that cool? It's like, Dan goes, yeah, it'd be great. It's like, do that. And when it came out, like, Karen's like, what is this? It's a Vertigo book. It's not even under, you just like it's a DC comic. What is this? And I also had a good relationship with Karen. So like, she was annoyed. She absolutely was delightfully annoyed, but good-hearted about it. But also telling me like, next time, it's like yeah, okay,
in Vertigo, absolutely.
I'll come to you. And then I did a vampire story for them. That was all fine. But yeah, that was a blast. And yeah, I mean, I do have a number of stories in my back pocket. Like, seriously, like there's things I think about, like, yeah, maybe they make a good screenplay. It's like, screenplay. What are you doing? I don't want to do a screenplay. I mean, it's funny. Kids ask me this all the time. Do you ever think about doing a chapter book? Like, meaning prose and not doing a graphic novel. They
Okay.
kids ask. It's
Sure.
like, and I tell them the truth, which is, you know what? My publisher has offered, if you ever have a chapter book and you want to do that, it's great. And what'll happen is I'll have an idea. Like, it'd be a brother and sister, okay? And they can do magic. And, they're at school and then this thing happens. And then they're back at home and they look in the backyard and suddenly a dragon shows up. Every time I get to like, and then the dragon shows up, I want to draw that. I don't want to write about it. I don't want to use just words. I just want to draw the dragon. I can't help myself. This is what I do. So quite often I'll come up with an idea and it's that there sometimes you need to gestate, but a couple like are bubbling to the surface that like, yeah, like that's not a kid's story. That's not a YA story. That just might be, a graphic novel for grown-ups and, which might bring me back to, a Vertigo or, I don't even want to mention, it'll definitely be published by Random House. We'll just leave it there then.
Fair enough.
I don't want to start mentioning other publishers. I have a very healthy relationship with Random House. That's who will make it. But that's the beauty of working in comics and lucky enough to be able to write and draw your own stuff. That if you come up with an idea, you don't have to go out and find a new best friend who's going to draw it for you. It's like, no, I'll just go do that. It might take me a year, and I'm pretty fast. A little too fast. I've heard this. I'm going to brag. I've heard this from buddies. Again, comic books, man. Comic books, mother effer. That's how this happens. So I've been doing Hilo for a while, and then a number of cartoonists I knew would come through Random House. They would pitch their books, and some got deals to get their books published at Random House. And in the discussion, it's like, so do you think you can do a book a year? And a lot of them like, no, I can't do a book a year. It's like, it might take 2 years. And they would, and I heard from a couple of friends, said, and they would say, well, Judd Winick does Hilo. He does it a book a year. And they're mostly like, well, good for Judd. And they're calling back like, yes, it's like, Judd does a book a year. And I was like, yeah, well, okay. I did my 10,000 hours doing superhero comics. I can write fast because I had to do monthlies. This time I don't have to change things because Nightwing's not going to space or breaking a leg. I can just do it. And also, I did syndicated comic strips for a really long time. For a number of years. I draw fast. and I draw cartoony. So those two things, I can do it quick. And just looking at my stuff, like, that's how I do it. So that's why it's always going to be a book a year. This year, two books. We had The Mighty, who came out in February, and this October. It's a holiday book, so it comes out in October, which makes no sense to me. But
you gotta buy it, man. That's the present for Christmas. So there you go.
It is. No, in 2 years we're planning on doing a Halloween book.
Fantastic.
And I assume that'll come out in June. August. Yeah. Like be purple cover with pumpkins all over it, like in June. It's like cracks me up. Just cracks me up.
That's fantastic. All right,
but everybody should have these problems.
Indeed, absolutely. All right, I got to. Are we cool for time? Because there's two other things I want to talk to you about. Because it's been about 10 or 11 years since you left DC, and you were part of the big New 52 push. Yeah. And 2 books in particular. First, let's talk, because once again, Judd can't step away from controversy. Catwoman and that wonderful first issue where it ends with, and by the way, you can swear all you want, buddy. It's okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I believe it was the first issue of your Catwoman run where Batman and Selina are fucking on the rooftop and everything. And how dare you? But again, you guys are making comics for adults. And as an adult, I'm like, yeah, of course, this is fine. But apparently some of the audience objected. But yeah, tell me about your ideas for Catwoman, because you were following, Darwin Cook had a great run. And Ed, I think it was after. Was it after Ed's run?
Yeah, it was after. It was after Brubaker for sure. New 52 came about. They had basically. It was one of the largest. I was just telling about like getting together, Jeff Johns and Greg Rucka and Dan and myself. This is one of the bigger times they ever did this. They called them basically all the writers of most of the books into New York to discuss what could come out of Flashpoint. So Jeff was coming to the end of Flashpoint, and one of the things of Flashpoint was that it could rejigger the entire universe. And in the course of the conversation, one of the things that people kept coming back to is that Superman and Lois Lane being married, like what people felt like maybe we undo that. Now Mike Carlin, a very good point. Like, we felt after so many years that Lois Lane's supposed to be the best journalist, around. And she's kind of an idiot to not figure out that Clark is Superman. It just seems stupid to us. He said, if you guys can figure out a way around that she doesn't look like an idiot, like, okay. And that was part of the discussion. And this discussion led to Dan having this idea about, what if we start over? What if we chuck the whole thing and just start over? And we just revamp the entire universe. He said, I think we're ready for it. And that's when the idea of the New 52 came about. And we're going to do 52 comics. And they started parceling out like just jobs, who wants to do what. And Dan came to me with Catwoman, because I hadn't done Catwoman before. And he always liked what he said. He said, you're a randy motherfucker sometimes. It's like, so like, I had to pull you back several times on Outsiders, where Paul Levitt said, we're not printing that. It's like, so I'm thinking, it's like, oh, okay. So you want a fairly sexy Catwoman. I said, okay. And I came back and I told him at the end of the first issue, they're having sex, because that's what I'm talking about. Let's do that. And my point being, like, I just had this, the vibe of it was that Batman and Catwoman, they are the last people who should be together. He's Batman, she's a criminal. But the whole idea is that they can't keep their hands off each other. And it wasn't even an emotional thing, which is there. It was just sort of this carnal thing, like a human thing, this little more flesh and blood thing, which you don't see from Batman. He's all about self-control, right? But this idea that he just lusts after her, and vice versa. Like, it's a pretty bad idea for her to be sleeping with Batman. But she's also somebody who has to touch the stove. It makes more sense to her. Like, she is someone who's a bit addicted to danger. And that's the idea. We're going to start small, where she's like really barely a cat burglar. She's a thief. We're starting low end. And, I had about a year planned out, and that was going to be fun. But then they also came to me. They wanted to revamp a Batman title, and they wanted to come up with Batwing. And Batwing was going to be the Batman of Africa. And that really appealed to me because it was kind of a blank slate. Grant Morrison had done Batman Incorporated and had like a quick couple of pages introducing Batwing, who was a little bit more like Tony Stark, a little bit more like Black Panther, that he was incredibly wealthy and he was a scientist and it was a suit of armor. And I liked the suit of armor part. I didn't like the wealthy part. So I asked permission, can I jigger with it a little bit? And they said, that's cool. And what I came back with is I want him, I actually want him to come from nothing. I want him to be in Africa. I want him to be a boy soldier, which, he came from a tortured existence where his family was taken from him. He was put here and he was, forced to run with a warlord and had to do terrible things. And also that he gained a lot of skills in doing that. And it was a great run, which also didn't do well. It didn't sell particularly well, but but people really, really liked it. I will say that I finished my run with Catwoman. I was just doing Batwing. I left Batwing because, again, it wasn't doing great. And DC's a business. I got to sell comics. The note they kept giving me is like making it more superhero-y with a Y at the end. And I kept making it more superhero-y, but it was never quite enough. And by my last arc, it was like, can we get a little more of this, a little more of that? It's like, I don't really want to tell that story. I wanted to do more like this Batman of Africa. I was happy where we were. We're getting a little farther from base camp. And that's why I walked away. Luckily, it was right when I had finished a draft of Hilo. And I was ready to, for the very first time in in over 12 years, not be writing a monthly comic for DC Comics. But the interesting thing about Batwing is that it was very popular in Africa and still is. So my run, which was collected, is still literally read in Africa. And they did a documentary about it. You can look it up, Batwing, and behind Batwing, which I was sort of stunned. I mean, it's a very, very odd thing. I did have this happen with Juniper Lee, which was my anime series for Cartoon Network. We did 4 seasons, and years later, I found out it was huge in Brazil.
Wow.
I was on Twitter, and all these 20 somethings had said when they grew up, it was like this huge show. And all these Brazilians it was incredibly popular in Brazil. And I don't know why. It just was, big run in Brazil, did really, really well. And it wasn't just like a one-off. Like I heard from all these Brazilian kids. And when I still talk to people who grew up of a certain age, like, yeah, I did Juniper Lee. Like, oh my God. Like they're very, very excited. So similarly, Batwing was very, very popular in Africa and continues to be. So it's, I guess, ending on this idea. It's a great little business to be in, John. You do these stories, you throw them over the transom, and sometimes, you don't break the bank necessarily, and people don't buy the books, but you do reach folks in a way that's, amazing. The work never completely disappears. There are people out there, and if you're lucky enough, in my case, to have a great publisher like DC, who's going to keep the work in print, so people can get to it. And see the characters you come up with have a different life, even if it's just staying in print, or if you do something like Jason Todd, the Red Hood, pops up in video games and, live action TV here and there. And there's always rumblings and rumors that'll wind up on the big screen at some point, which would be fun. And I love that. And, I'm here and I've got my own little universe, which is knock wood, cooking along quite well. We've passed that threshold of the kids who read the books when they were 7 and 8 years old are now 18, 19 years old. I waved them goodbye, except for the ones who are hardcore comic fans are still reading it. Talking to the 20-year-olds who are still reading Hilo, it's awesome. That's great. But then meeting the 7-year-olds who just pick them up 4 at a time, it's great. It's great. I get to be one of those old dudes who talks about yeah, oh no, I did that 10 years ago. I'm glad you're still enjoying that.
It's excellent, man. And truly, having known you all these years, it is fantastic the way the career has unfolded. And again, being a jealous older fan, would love to see it come back. Do whether it's a TV series, a novel, or a graphic novel like a caper, or if you got more superheroes, Steve Wacker, your old buddy, now in charge of Marvel.
I will not lie to you. I gotta tell you the truth. This could feel shallow, but I hope it doesn't. I knew so Steve Wacker, new editor-in-chief over at Marvel. I knew Steve back in the day at DC Comics. He left the DC Comics on great terms, and actually, we left things on great terms. I ran into him a couple of years ago at San Diego and picked up right where we left off, and he's the greatest. I selfishly thought when Steve got the job as editor-in-chief, it's oh shit, Well, now I just need to make one phone call if I ever want to go back to Marvel. I'm not going to have to like, go through channels or, like go there hat in hand. Like, Steve, I got this Hulk idea. It's like, all right, I'm listening. I know I can talk to Steve about it, and at least he'll listen. And if he's not going to do it, he'll tell me right away. Like, we are not doing that. Like, why? It's like,
Sure.
no, we got this whole Hulk thing going on. You can't touch that. What else you got? What do you want to do? It's like we could talk like adults. And he knows I'm not a crazy person, which is helpful because in this business, there's a lot of crazy people. I'm not one of them. I'm an adult person who does things, and so I am a little bit closer to doing something for Marvel Comics just because I started thinking like, well, Steve's there. If I did something, what would I do? It's like, okay, uh, again, it's all about the fire in the belly. Taking a shower, getting half an idea, like, oh, that'd be a pretty cool Spider-Man story.
Well, you said earlier unfinished business with EXiles, and again, you're a guy that can handle alternate worlds and parallel worlds, and again, you got a proven track record. That's a great thing, truly, man. You really have a wonderful body of work that you can look back on, and again, the jukes that you've made with Hilo and now the Mighty and everything, very cool. God, we've been talking, and I know we're getting close to lunchtime. I'm
Yep.
happy to wrap up if you need to, and just remind people that coming in October, we got the Hilo holiday special. Why don't you? And I'll let you because right now the camera keeps bouncing back and forth from whoever's talking, but you'll
Oh,
hold it
okay.
up when you're talking. And Hilo holiday special, and I love the box set because that's here. Well, yeah, yeah. When you're talking, you can hold it up,
I will.
but
I will.
my buddy Jason Wood always refers to like these when they overdo like a hardcover or a box set. He calls it shelf porn, and it is. You're proud to have it on your bookshelf, man, and that's the great thing. So beyond the wonderful hardcovers of Hilo, you got this fantastic box set. So that's
Oh,
really great. But yeah, show everybody what's
it's a
coming up.
monster. It's a monster. So
Yeah,
yes, the box set is available. So if you want to buy all 10, all the first 10 books in one big box, the epic box set, it's right there. Coming in October, there's the
there
Hilo
you go.
holiday special. There's the advanced reader copy, not with the very pretty foil that you'll see on it. And
I
this was
understand.
born out of just as we were talking about comic strips, when we were kids, I always looked forward to the holiday season because they started doing. I mean, comic strips came up in real time in the sense like suddenly the comic strips started reflecting about the holidays that were coming up, and I always loved it. I love those seasonal stories. And as a kid, I always envisioned I'm going to do a comic strip. I'll get to do that holiday story. And ooh, wouldn't it be great if I get to do an animated holiday special someday based on my comic strip? That was the thing I always thought about. Um, and with that, I started talking to my editor about that. And I said, yeah, it'd be kind of fun if I could do like a holiday book for Hilo. And she leaned in so fast, like, would you do a holiday book? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, holiday books are quite popular. When editors say popular, they mean people buy the books. They mean like, there's money to be
Yeah,
had. There's money to be had there. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like, so would be into that? It's like, yeah, no, I've got stories which rolling around my head like it'll be an action adventure story, it's like the kids, but and it's a holiday book. It's like it's not about religion, it's about snow and gift giving and decoration, and a big giant snowman is trying to kill them. Like that's going to be the story. um and when I do the Halloween one, the same thing. It's going to be like costumes and candy and decorations and shit, and some big monsters trying to kill them. That's going to be the story. So again, it's one of those things like, oh no, I get to scratch that. I always wanted to do a holiday story itch. There it is. I get to do it. It's great.
beautiful, buddy. There you go. Come back in October, and we'll talk more because you'll send me the PDF, and I can talk more in detail about
Ah,
the
great.
Hilo holiday book. That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
It's
And
a very full on. It's more even more than a holiday book is all the trappings. It's a full on action adventure story, more like even like more than most. Like
uh,
there's so much fighting and blowing up and things going on there. Like I thought they were gonna kick back to me. It's like doesn't feel sort of festive as we would like it. It's like, it's got a lot of giant snowman and the kids fighting it. It's like, well, yeah, it's what I do.
that's
And they're
beautiful, man. No,
they're cool with it.
absolutely. And I will tease that Judd and I talked off the air last week, and I suggested to him, and I don't think he probably hasn't come up with it yet, but with all this new heroes, got to come up with a superhero name for the team.
Yes. It has not left. I mean, yes. Oh my goodness. So at some point when the Mighty comes together with Hilo and the gang and the other couple characters I'm introducing, they got to call themselves something. Even if someone starts it off as half a joke, but then it just sticks. Then it sticks. I mean, there's so many great tropes about how it's going to happen, that someone says the name and then they say it to the villain says it back, and suddenly we're the so-and-so. It's just, I hadn't thought about that. They got to come up with a name. And somewhere, you feel that, you said that somewhere, someone in marketing at Random House, they just felt that, like an angel got its wings. Like, oh, Judd just thought of something that's going to make it a little easier to sell. That's like a marketing angel just got its wings.
That's the ambition. Absolutely. Everybody, Hilo's holiday special comes out in October, and can't wait to see it and what he's got in store for Hilo and the gang. The Mighty is already out. Came out in February, but catch up on the Hiloverse of Judd Winick. Dude, wonderful conversation as always. It is always great to catch up with you, and really, it means a lot that you come back as much as you do.
I love it, John. This is always the best. This is better than therapy. It's free, and I get to talk about myself a lot. It's great.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.